The Iraqi Air Force is the aerial warfare service branch of the Iraqi Armed Forces, responsible for the policing of international borders and surveillance of national assets. The IQAF also acts as a support force for the Iraqi Navy and the Iraqi Army, and it also allows Iraq to rapidly deploy its developing army. The Iraqi Air Force was first founded in 1931, during British rule of Iraq, with only a few pilots. Aside from a brief period during the Second World War, the Iraqi Air Force operated mostly British aircraft until the 14th July Revolution in 1958, when the new Iraqi government began increased diplomatic relationships with the Soviet Union. The Air Force used both Soviet and British aircraft throughout the 1950s and 1960s. When Saddam Hussein came to power in 1979, the Air Force grew very quickly when Iraq ordered more Soviet and French aircraft. Its peak came a few years after the long and bloody Iran-Iraq War, in 1988, when it consisted of over 950 aircraft, becoming one of the largest air forces in the region. Its downfall came during the Gulf War and continued while coalition forces enforced no-fly zones. The remains of Iraq's Air Force was destroyed during the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Currently, the IQAF is rebuilding and receiving most of his training and aircraft from the United States. History: the Royal Iraqi Air Force considered its founding day as April 22, 1931, when the first pilots flew in from training in the United Kingdom. Before the creation of the new Air Force, the RAF Iraq Command was in charge of all British Armed Forces elements in Iraq in the 1920s and early 1930s. The RIRAF was based at the airport in the Washash neighborhood of Baghdad, and consisted of 5 pilots, aeronautics students trained at the RAF College Cranwell, and 32 aircraft mechanics. The original 5 pilots were Natiq Muhammad Khalil Altay, Muhammad Ali Jawad, Hafdh Aziz, Akram Talib Mushtaq, and Musa Ali. During the early years of the Royal Iraqi Air Force, it mainly received aircraft from the United Kingdom as well as Breeder Bar-65 attack planes and SM-79 bombers from Italy. In the years following Iraqi independence, the Air Force was still dependent on the Royal Air Force. The Iraqi government allocated the majority of its military expenditure to the Iraqi Army, and by 1936 the Royal Iraqi Air Force had only 37 pilots and 55 aircraft. The following year, the Air Force showed some growth, increasing its number of pilots to 127. 1940s, the RIRAF was first used in combat against the revolts by tribes in Dana and Rumay for southern Iraq in 1934 under order of Bakr Siddiqui, where it suffered its first combat loss. Its first combat against another conventional military was in the 1941 Anglo-Iraqi War, when the Iraqi government made a bid for full independence following a coup by Rashid Ali against pro-British Iraqi leaders. The RIRAF was destroyed as a fighting force, resulting in an alliance with the Axis, which involved Luftwaffe aircraft and Italian Regia Aeronautica aircraft assisting Iraqi ground forces. The German units were Special Staff F and Flyjafar 1/4 Air Iraq. However, losses, a lack of spares and replacements resulted in their departure, following which the coup was defeated by British forces. A roughly 1946 order of battle for the Air Force can be found in Jane's fighting aircraft of World War II. The RIRAF was still recovering from its destruction by the British in 1948 when they joined in the war against the newly created State of Israel in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Even though the RIRAF now had some modern aircraft, the RIRAF played a small role in the First War against Israel. From 1948 to 1949 the RIRAF operated Abrahamson training bombers from Jordan, from where they flew a number of attacks against the Israelis. Some of the Ansons were replaced by the modern Hawker Fury fighter. However, these aircraft flew only 2 missions against Israel and Iraqi markings before most were transferred to the Egyptians. 14 Hawker Furies had been delivered, but by June 7, 1948 only 6 remained operational. Despite these early problems, the RIRAF purchased more Furies, acquiring a total of 38 FMK-1 single-seaters and 4 two-seaters, which equipped numbers 1 and 7 squadrons RIRAF. The only RIRAF Fury victory was an Israeli Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress bomber. 1950s and early 1960s. During the 1950s, the RIRAF was affected when the monarchy was toppled in 1958, resulting in the cessation of arms imports from Western countries such as Great Britain. From 1950 to 1958, most of the RIRAF aircraft were from the United Kingdom. The first jet fighters, the de Havilland Vampire of the RIRAF, were delivered in 1953. The RIRAF also received de Havilland Venoms and Hawker Hunters during the mid-1950s. In 1954 and 1956, 19 de Havilland Vampire jet fighters, 14 ex-RAF Hawkers funded by the U.S. were delivered. They also received 4 Bristol 170 freighters in 1953. During the 14th July Revolution in 1958, the King of Iraq was overthrown and the country established diplomatic and political relationships with Warsaw Pact countries, while simultaneously severing relations with Western nations. The Iraqi Air Force dropped the Royal from its name after the revolution. The Soviets were quick to supply MiG-17s, and later MiG-19 and MiG-21 fighters, as well as Ilyushin Il-28 bombers to the new Iraqi government. They also received 13 Ilyushin Il-14 transports in 1959 from Poland. The first MiG-17s were first delivered in 1958 to replace the de Havilland Vampire. During the late 1960s and or early 1970s, additional MiG-17 examples may have been purchased and then forwarded to either Syria or Egypt. Tom Cooper and Stefan Kuhn list the Air Force's squadrons in 1961 as, Number 1 Squadron, Venom FBMK. 1, based at Habban IAB, Company Captain A. Munam Ismail, Number 2 Squadron, Me-4, based at Rashid AB, CO Major Warwick Ibrahim Adam, Number 3 Squadron, and 12B, based at Rashid AB, CO Captain Taha Ahmad Mohammed Rashid, Number 4 Squadron, Fury FBMK. 11, based at Kirkuk Air Base, Company Major A. Latif, Number 5 Squadron, MiG-17F, based at Rashid AB, CO Major Khalid Sarah Rashid, Number 6 Squadron, Hunter, based at Habban IAB, CO Captain Hamid Shaban, Number 7 Squadron, MiG-17F, based at Kirkuk, CO Major Nema Abdullah Dulemi, Number 8 Squadron, Il-28, based at Rashid AB, CO Major Adnan Amin Rashid, Number 9 Squadron, MiG-19, in process of formation. The IQAF received about 50 MiG-19s during the early 1960s, but most of these remained in their crates and were subsequently redelivered to Egypt, and only the 6th Squadron ever operated the 18 MiG-19P and missile-armed MiG-19PMs, which it did from Rashid Air Base in Baghdad. Iraq also received MiG-21 F-13 fighters in 1962 and 16 bombers after 1963. The November 1963 Iraqi coup d'état copyright tat realigned Iraq with NATO powers, and as a result, more second-hand Hawker Hunters were delivered to the IQAF. For several years aircraft imports from the communist Eastern European nations had been suspended until 1966, when MiG-21 Picker Ford's Interceptors was purchased from the Soviet Union. After the death in an aircraft accident of Abdul Salam F., the Iraqi president, who was then replaced by his brother. In 1966, the Syrian-Iraqi captain Munir Rafah defected with his MiG-21 F-13 to Israel, who in turn gave it to the United States for evaluation under the codename Havdonut. However, by then the MiG-21 F-13S had been replaced by MiG-21 FL and PFM in the Iraqi Air Force's frontline units, and the MiG-21 F-13S were being used as operational conversion trainers. Six-Day War. During the Six-Day War, it bombed several air bases and land targets, including strikes by Tu-16 bombers on Israeli air bases, where one of the striking bombers was shot down by Israelis, but the rest of the bombers returned safely. It also played a significant role in supporting Jordanian troops. As well, the Iraqi Air Force had one Pakistani pilot, Saif al-Azam, who claimed 2 kills of Israeli fighters over H-3 in an Iraqi Hawker Hunter. Iraqi pilots in Hawker Hunters made a further 5 claims against Israeli planes in air combat. Due to Hunters and MiG-21 PFMs, the IQAF were successfully able to defend their air bases in western Iraq from additional Israeli attacks. On the same day, the IQAF also were able to break through Israeli airspaces and destroyed 5 Israeli aircraft in air fighting. 1970s and the Yom Kippur War. Throughout this decade, the IQAF grew in size and capability, as the 20-year Treaty of Friendship with the USSR signed in 1971 brought large numbers of relatively modern fighter aircraft to the Air Force. The Iraqi government was never satisfied with the Soviets supplying them, and while they were purchasing modern fighters like the MiG-21 and the Sukhoi Su-20, they began persuading the French to sell Mirage F-1s fighters and later Jaguars. Before the Yom Kippur War, the IQAF sent 12 Hawker Hunters to Egypt, where they stayed to fight. Only one survived the war. The IQAF first received their Sukhoi Su-7s in 1968. They were originally stationed in Syria. Aircraft deployed to Syria suffered heavy losses due to Israeli aircraft and SAMs. In addition, they were hit with friendly fire from Syrian SAMs. A planned attack on 8 October was cancelled due to these heavy losses as well as disagreements with the Syrian government. Eventually, all aircraft besides several Sukhoi Su-7s were withdrawn from bases in Syria. During the war in October 1973, the first airstrike against Israeli bases in Sinai was composed of Iraqi planes. They hit artillery sites and Israeli tanks, and they also claimed to have destroyed 21 Israeli fighters in air combat. Shortly after the war, the IQAF ordered 14 Tu-22Bs and 2 Tu-22As from the USSR as well as Raduga Kh-22 missiles from Soviet Union. By 1975, 10 Tu-22Bs and 2 Tu-22As were delivered. The 1970s also saw a series of fierce Kurdish uprisings in the north of the country against Iraq. With the help of the Shah of Iran, the Kurds received arms and supplies including modern SAMs as well as some Iranian soldiers. The IQAF suffered heavy casualties fighting the Kurds, so they began using their new Tu-22s in combat against them, as they were able to avoid a greater percentage of SAMs due to their higher bombing altitude and improved electronic countermeasures. During the mid-1970s, tensions with Iran were high but was later resolved with the Algiers Treaty. 1980s and war with Iran. Between 1980 and the summer of 1990, the number of combat aircraft in the IQAF went from 332 to over 950. Before the Iraqi invasion of Iran, the IQAF had expected 16 modern Dassault Mirage F-1EQs from France and were also in the middle of receiving a total of 240 new aircraft and helicopters from their Eastern European allies. When Iraq invaded Iran in late September 1980, the Soviets and the French stopped delivery of additional aircraft to Iraq but resumed deliveries a few months later. The IQAF had to instead fight with obsolete Su-20, MiG-21 Fishbeds and MiG-23 Floggers. The MiG-21 was the main interceptor of the force while their MiG-23s were used for ground attack and interception. The Su-20 were pure ground attack aircraft. On the first day of the war, a formation of MiG-23s and MiG-21s raided airports and airfields of the Iranian Air Force, but the Iranian aircraft were not heavily damaged because of strong concrete hangars that housed the planes. In retaliation for these aerial attacks, the Iranian Air Force launched Operation Gamin 99 a day after the war was launched. During late 1981, it was soon clear that the modern Mirage F-1s and the Soviet MiG-25s were effective against the Iranians. The IQAF began to use their new Eastern weaponry, which included Tu-22K DKDP bombers, equipped with Kh-22 MMP air-to-ground missiles, MiG-25s equipped with Kh-25 air-to-ground missiles as well as Kh-25 and Kh-58 anti-radar missiles, and even MiG-23BNs, equipped with Kh-29 liters per ton missiles. In 1983, to satisfy the Iraqis waiting for their upgraded Exocet-capable Mirage F-1EQ-5S, Super-Attendeds were leased to Iraq. The Iranian gunboats and the Iranian oil tanker fleet suffered severe damage at the hand of the 5 Super-Attendeds equipped with Exocet anti-ship missiles. One of these was lost during their 20-month combat use and 4 returned to the air in a Avail in 1985 Interceptors. While the IQAF generally played a minor role in the war against Iran, it had bombed airfields in Tehran and other Iranian cities. The Air Force had a more successful role attacking tankers and other vessels using Exocet missiles on their French-built Mirage F-1s. On May 17, 1987, an Iraqi F-1 mistakenly launched two Exocet anti-ship missiles into the American frigate USS Stark, crippling the vessel and killing 37 sailors. By 1987, the Air Force consisted of 40,000 men, of whom about 10,000 were a part of the Air Defense Command. Its main base was in Tammuz, Al-Bakr, Al-Qadisiyah, Ali Air Base, Saddam Air Base and other major bases including Basra. The IQAF operated from 24 main operating bases and 30 dispersal bases, with nuclear-hardened shelters and extensive runways. Notable Iraqi pilots of the Iran-Iraq War. Unlike many other nations with modern air forces, Iraq was engaged in a long and protracted war. The 8-year-long conflict with Iran gave the Air Force the opportunity to develop some battle-tested and hardened fighter pilots. Though information about the IQAF is, at best, hard to access, two men stand out as the best Iraqi fighter aces. Mohammad Rayyan, nicknamed Sky Falcon, who flew MiG-21 MFs in 1980-81, and claimed 2 confirmed kills against Iranian F-5s in 1980. With the rank of captain, Rayyan qualified on MiG-25 picoseconds in late 1981 and went on to claim another 8 kills, 2 of which are confirmed, before being shot down and killed by IRIAF F-14s in 1986. Captain Omar Goban was another successful fighter pilot. While flying a MiG-21 he scored air kills against 2 F-5E Tiger IIs and 1 F-4E Phantom II in 1980. He later transferred to the MiG-23 and survived the war, but was killed in January 1991 flying a MiG-29 versus an American F-15C, 1990s a Euro-Persian Gulf War no-fly zones. In August 1990, Iraq had one of the largest air forces in the region even after the Long Irony Euro-Iraq War. The Air Force at that time contained more than 500 aircraft in their inventory. Theoretically, the IQAF should have been hardened by the conflict with Iran, but post-war purges of the IQAF leadership and other personnel decimated the Air Force, as the Iraqi regime struggled to bring it back under total control. Training was brought to the minimum during the whole of 1990. The table below shows the Iraqi Air Force at the start of the Persian Gulf War, its losses, damaged aircraft, flights to Iran and remaining assets at the end of the Persian Gulf War. This is a combination of losses both in the air and on the ground and exclude the helicopters and aircraft that belonged to Iraqi Army Aviation, Iraqi Navy and the aviation wing of the Iraqi Department of Border Enforcement. During the 1991 Persian Gulf War, the Iraqi Air Force was devastated by the United States, the United Kingdom and their allies. Most airfields were heavily struck, and in air combat Iraq was only able to obtain 4 confirmed kills, while sustaining 23 losses. All of the out-of-service Tupolev Tu-22s that Iraq possessed were destroyed by bombing at the start of Operation Desert Storm, though they had already been withdrawn from the inventory of the Iraqi Air Force and were simply used as decoys and do not appear on the operational list of lost aircraft from the Iraqi Air Force. The Mig-25 Force recorded the first Iraqi air-to-air kill during the war. A MiG-25 PDS, piloted by Lieutenant Zahid Dawood of the 84th Fighter Squadron, shot down an U.S. Navy FA-18 Hornet from the FA-81 on the first night of the war. In 2009 the Pentagon announced they had identified the remains of the pilot, U.S. Navy Captain Michael Scott Seicher, solving an 18-year mystery. Captain Seicher, who was a lieutenant commander at the time, was apparently buried by nomadic Bedouin tribesmen close to where his jet was shot down in a remote area of Abba province. The second air-air kill was recorded by a pilot named Jamil Sayed on January 19. Flying a MiG-29 he shot down a Royal Air Force Tornado GA-1A with A-60 missiles. The RAF aircraft serial ZA-396/GE was piloted by Flight Lieutenant D.J. Waddington, and Flight Lieutenant A.J. Stewart, and crashed 51 nautical miles southeast of Tallil Air Base. In another incident, An Iraqi Foxbat-E eluded 8 USAF F-15C Eagles, firing 3 missiles at a USAF EF-111 electronic warfare aircraft, forcing them to abort their mission. In yet another incident, 2 MiG-25s approached a pair of F-15 Eagles, fired missiles, and then outran the American fighters. 2 more F-15s joined the pursuit, and a total of 10 air-to-air missiles were fired at the Foxbats, none of which could reach them. In an effort to demonstrate their own air offensive capability, on January 24 the Iraqis attempted to mount a strike against the major Saudi oil refinery in Aiq. 2 Mirage F-1 fighters laden with incendiary bombs and 2 MiG-23s took off from bases in Iraq. They were spotted by USAF E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft, and 2 Royal Saudi Air Force F-15s were sent to intercept. When the Saudis appeared, the Iraqi MiGs turned tail, but the Mirages pressed on. Captain Iyad al-Shimrani, one of the Saudi pilots, maneuvered his jet behind the Mirages and shot down both aircraft. After this episode, the Iraqis made no more air efforts of their own, sending most of their jets to Iran in hopes that they might someday get their air force back. The ethnic Assyrian Air Vice Marshal George Sada was sacked and imprisoned by Saddam Hussein for refusing to execute prisoners of war. During the Persian Gulf War, most Iraqi pilots and aircraft fled to Iran to escape the bombing campaign because no other country would allow them sanctuary. The Iranians impounded these aircraft after the war and returned 7 Su-25s in 2014, while putting the rest in the service of the Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force claiming them as reparations for the Iran-Iraq War. Because of this, Saddam Hussein did not send the rest of his air force to Iran just prior to Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003, instead opting to bury them in sand. Saddam Hussein, preoccupied with Iran and regional power balance, is reported to have had commented, "The Iranians are even stronger than before, they now have our air force." These included, Mirage F-1S, Su-20 and Su-22 M24 fitters, Su-24 MK Fencer DS, Su-25 KUBK Frogfoots, MiG-23 floggers, MiG-29 AUB Fulcrums and a number of Il-76s, including the one-off AEWAWACS prototype Il-76ADNAN-1. Also, prior to Operation Desert Storm, 10 Iraqi MiG-23s were sent to Yugoslavia for servicing, but were never returned due to the Yugoslav wars. Persian Gulf War aircraft losses claimed by the Allies. The Iraqi Air Force itself lists its air-to-air losses at 23 airframes compared to the U.S. claims of 44. Similarly, the Allies initially acknowledged 0 losses in air combat to the Iraqi Air Force, and only in 1995 acknowledged 1 loss, and after 2003 another 1 loss. A further 2 Iraqi claims and 1 probable are still listed by the Allies as lost to ground fire rather than an Iraqi fighter. As well as the Persian Gulf War, the IQAF was also involved in the 1991 uprisings in Iraq. Alongside Army aviation Mi-8, Mi-24, Gazelle, Alouette and Puma helicopters were used to counter the attempted Shiite and Kurdish revolts between 1991 and 1993. After the Gulf War, the Air Force consisted only of a sole Su-24 and a single squadron of MiG-25s purchased from the Soviet Union in 1979. Some Mirages, MiG-23 milliliters and Su-22s also remained in use, with the MiG-29s being withdrawn from use by 1995 due to engine TBO limits and MiG-21s withdrawn due to obsolescence. During the period of sanctions that followed, the Air Force was severely restricted by no-fly zones established by the coalition and by restricted access to spare parts due to United Nations sanctions. Many aircraft were unserviceable and a few were hidden from American reconnaissance to escape potential destruction. In patrols of the no-fly zones, 3 Iraqi MiGs were lost. Despite several attacks from US F-15s and F-14s firing AIM-54 and AIM-120 missiles at the Iraqi fighters, the Iraqi maneuvers ensured they were able to avoid any casualties in their dispute over Iraqi airspace. The last recorded air-to-air kill was on December 23, 2002, when a MiG-25 Foxbat shot down an American RQ-1 Predator. Recent information released by DTIC containing the top-secret archives of the defunct Iraqi Air Force sheds light on the true losses and operations of the Air Force during 1991. Operation Iraqi Freedom Euro 2003. By 2003, Iraq's air power numbered an estimated 180, of which only about a half were flyable. In late 2002, a Yugoslav weapons company provided servicing for the MiG-21s and MiG-23s, violating the UN sanctions. An aviation institute in Bijeljina, Bosnia and Herzegovina, supplied the engines and spare parts. These, however, were too late to improve the condition of Iraq's Air Force. On the brink of the US-led invasion, Saddam Hussein disregarded his Air Force's wishes to defend the country's airspace against coalition aircraft and ordered the bulk of his fighters disassembled or buried. Air Vice Marshal Abed Hamd Mohash was apparently the Air Force commander immediately prior to the war. Some were later found by U.S. excavation forces around the Al-Taqadum and Al-Asad air bases, including MiG-25s and Su-25s. The IQAF proved to be totally non-existent during the invasion. A few helicopters were seen but no fighters flew to combat coalition aircraft. During the occupation phase, most of Iraq's combat aircraft were found by American and Australian forces in poor condition at several air bases throughout the country while others were discovered buried. Most of the IQAF's aircraft were destroyed during and after the invasion, and all remaining equipment was junked or scrapped in the immediate aftermath of the war. None of the aircraft acquired during Saddam's time remained in service. Post-invasion to present. The Iraqi Air Force, like all Iraqi forces after the 2003 invasion of Iraq, is being rebuilt as part of the overall program to build a new Iraqi defense force. The newly created Air Force consisted only of 35 people in 2004 when it began operations. In December 2004, the Iraqi Ministry of Defense signed 2 contracts with the Polish defense consortium BUMAR. The first contract, worth $132 million, was for the delivery of 20 PZLW-3 Sokar-cubed Angstrom helicopters and the training of 10 Iraqi pilots and 25 maintenance personnel. They were intended to be delivered by November 2005, but in April 2005 the company charged with fulfilling the contract announced the delivery would not go ahead as planned, because the delivery schedule proposed by PZL Swatnik was not good enough. As a result, only 2 were delivered in 2005 for testing. The second contract, worth $105 million, consisted of supplying the Iraqi Air Force with 24 second-hand Russian-made, reworked Mi-17. As of 2008, 8 have been delivered and 2 more are on their way. The fleet of IPs is already operational. The Mi-17s are reported to have some attack capability. The Air Force primarily serves as a light reconnaissance and transport operation. On March 4, 2007, the IQAF carried out its first medical evacuation in the city of Baghdad when an injured police officer was airlifted to a hospital. In 2007, the USAF's 2nd Air Force, part of Air Education and Training Command, was given responsibility to provide curricula and advice to the Iraqi Air Force as it stands up its own technical training and branch-specific basic training among others. This mission is known as CAFTT for Coalition Air Forces Training Team. During the 2008 Battle of Basra, the Iraqi Air Force planned, executed, and monitored 104 missions in support of Iraqi ground security forces in Basra during Operation Charge of the Nights in the Basra area between March 25 and April 1. In 2009, the first of several Iraqi officers completed their flying training at RAF Cranwell, a development with echoes of the Iraqi Air Force's early beginnings. On April 29, 2009, the first 3 of an unspecified number of Beech 350 Super King Air light transport airplanes arrived at London Luton Airport on delivery to the Iraqi Air Force. On August 30, 2009, the Iraq Defense Ministry revealed that they had discovered 19 Soviet MiG-21 and MiG-23 aircraft that had been stored in Serbia. Saddam Hussein sent the 19 jet fighters to Serbia for repairs in the 1980s, during the Iran-Iraq War, but was unable to bring them back after sanctions had been imposed on his country. The Serbian government promised to make 2 of the aircraft available for immediate use, and would proceed to restore the remaining aircraft on a rush basis. It was reported in December 2007 that a deal had been reached between the Iraqi government and Serbia for the sale of arms and other military equipment including 36 Laster-95 basic trainers. It is speculated that Iraq may buy 50 or copyright Rosparty Al-Ghazel attack helicopters from France. In July 2008, Iraq had formally requested an order for 24 light attack and reconnaissance helicopters. The aircraft would either be the U.S. Army's new AR-H-70 helicopter or the more popular MH-6 Little Bird. On October 14, 2008, Aviation Week reported that two Hellfire-equipped Cessna 208Bs were spotted at an ATK facility in Meacham Airport, Fort Worth, Texas. The Iraqi Air Force was due to receive 3 armed Cessna Caravans in December 2008, with 2 more to be delivered in 2009. This represents the first IQAF strike capability since the start of the war in 2003. The Iraqi government announced in November 2008 that the Iraqi Air Force would purchase 108 aircraft through 2011. Ultimately the force will consist of up to 516 total aircraft by 2015. Then 550 total aircraft by 2018. Specific types being purchased included Eurocopter EC-635 and Bell AR-H-70 type helicopters. Additionally, 24 T-6 Texan II aircraft would be purchased for the light attack role. Over the summer of 2008, the Defense Department announced that the Iraqi government wanted to order more than 400 armored vehicles and other equipment worth up to $3 billion, and 6 C-130J transport planes, worth up to $1.5 billion. Iraq was due to buy 28 Czech-made L-159 training jets valued at $1 billion. 24 of the planes would be new, while 4 would come from Czech Army surplus stocks. Later the deal fell through. However, afterwards the Czech aviation company Aerovodokody reportedly agreed to sell 12 of the jets, although the deal wasn't yet approved by both countries' governments. Iraq's airspace was unguarded from December 2011 until 18 F-16 jet fighters and their pilots would be ready 2 years later. November 2011, there are currently 6 Iraqi F-16 candidates in the U.S. for different phases of pilot training. These students will form the core of Iraq's future F-16 force, which is equipped with the Northrop AN/APG-68V9 radar. The first Iraqi F-16 Block 52 made its inaugural flight in May 2014. It was officially delivered to the IQAF in a ceremony at Fort Worth, Texas on June 5, 2014. On June 26, 2014, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki said that they should have sought to buy other jet fighters like British, French and Russian, describing the order of American F-16s as long-winded and deluded. The IQAF instead acquired second-hand jet aircraft from Russia and Belarus to combat ISIS militants in northern Iraq, with the first batch arriving on June 28. The Iraqi Ministry of Defense confirmed the purchase of 5 Russian Sukhoi Su-25, uploading a video on its YouTube channel of their arrival. The Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force also delivered 7 Su-25s on July 1, the majority of which were ex-Iraqi aircraft that fled to Iran during the Gulf War. Air Force Commanders, 1936, Muhammad Ali Jawad, 1941, Mahmud Salman, 1959, Jalal al-Awati, 1963, Hardan al-Tikritai, 1965, Arif Abdul Razak, 1968, Jassam Muhammad al-Shahir, 1973–1976, Brigade Nima al-Dulaimi, 1978–1983, Muhammad Jassam al-Jiburi, 1985, Air Marshal Hamid Shaiban, 1990, Muzaim Hassan al-Tikritai, Khaldun Khattab, mid-1990s to 2003, Hamid Raja Shalla, 2005, Kamal Batsanji, 2008, President Anwar Hamid Amin. Order of battle: the Iraqi Air Force consists of 9 squadrons and 1 training wing. Flight Training Wing. The Flight Training Wing operates mostly fixed-wing aircraft such as the T-6A, Cessna 172, Cessna 208 and Beechcraft King Air 350. Wing including 1st and 12th Squadrons is moving from Kirkuk to Tikrit No. 1 Squadron IQAF the Iraqi Air Force's primary fixed-wing training squadron operating 4 T-6A, 12 Cessna 172 and 5 Cessna 208. It is based in Tikrit. Number 12 Squadron IQAF a training squadron currently operating 10 Bell 206 helicopters. Based at Kirkuk. Number 2 Squadron IQAF a helicopter airlift squadron operating 16 UH-1 Huey-2 helicopters donated by Jordan. The helicopters were refurbished and upgraded by the United States and delivered in 2006-2007. It is based in Taiji. Number 3 Squadron IQAF a reconnaissance squadron operating 8 Cessna 208 Caravan reconnaissance aircraft. Its base is Kirkuk Air Base. Number 4 Squadron IQAF a helicopter airlift squadron operating 30 Mi-17 helicopters. It is based in Taiji. Number 15 Squadron IQAF a helicopter squadron being formed specifically for the ISOF. The unit consists of 26 MiL-17 V5 helicopters. Number 23 Squadron IQAF a an airlift squadron operating 3 ex-USAF C-130E Hercules transport aircraft. Its base is at New El Muthana Air Base located at Baghdad International Airport. Number 70 Squadron IQAF a reconnaissance squadron operating 16 CH-2000 light reconnaissance aircraft. It is based in Basra. Number 87 Squadron IQAF a light transport and reconnaissance squadron currently operating the Beechcraft King Air 350. It is based at New El Muthana Air Base. Technical Training Wing based at Taiji. Aircraft inventory, current inventory. Possible sales and acquisitions. The Iraqi government is seeking the return of 8 to 12 MiG-21 sent to Yugoslavia in 1989. They will need to be refurbished if they are returned to service. On November 19, 2009, the USDSCA announced a formal request from the Iraqi government to buy up to 27 light and medium utility helicopters, in a deal worth up to $1.2 billion. The government of Iraq has requested a possible sale in a couple of categories. The light utility observation category already fits the EC-635, which reportedly has an option for additional helicopters in the contract. Candidates in these requests include 15 Aegistorland AW-109s or 15 Bell 429 medical evacuation and aerial observation helicopters, or 15 EADS UH-72 Lakota light utility helicopters, which won America's LUH competition. Medevac is one of their roles. In the medium utility category, candidates include 12 Aegistorland AW-139 medium utility helicopters, or 12 Bell 412s, which would possess many similarities to Iraq's less advanced Huey-IIs, or 12 Sikorsky UH-60M Black Hawk helicopters equipped with 24 T-700 GE-701D engines. However, these could be delayed, for reasons that go beyond the standard 30-day congressional blocking period. A drop in global oil prices from their recent $100+ highs has affected Iraq's budgets, and delayed a number of existing military purchases. This combination of budget issues, and a rigid agreement concerning the end of America's combat presence in Iraq, has left the Iraqi government in a position where it is unlikely to be able to properly enforce the military mandates it will assume. American and Iraqi personnel have been assessing what is possible by 2011-2012, and what might be done. Prioritization of requests will be especially tight in this environment. Throughout 2010 and 2011, the Iraqi government and the MOI announced intentions to buy Dassault Mirage F-1 and F-16C Block 52 fighters, whereby the Iraqi cabinet specified a sum of $900 million as a first installment of $3 billion worth of aircraft, equipment, spare parts, and training. The deal to buy the F-16 fighter seemed to teeter as the GOI reversed its decision on the 12th of February and wanted to divert the initial sum of $900 million to economic reconstruction. However, on the 12th July 2011, The GOI reiterated its interest in the F-16s due to the pending withdrawal of American forces from Iraq, and some sources indicate that the GOI is interested in doubling the number of fighters to be purchased to 36. There were talks to buy Czech-made combat aircraft Aero L-159A LCA with possible sale or royal trade of either 24 or 36 aircraft from Czech Air Force surplus. The purchase was not done, and as of 2013, the Czech Republic has not been able to secure its first export deal for its L-159 Alka fighter aircraft. The deal for 24/36 Czech L-159 aircraft was cancelled. Instead, South Korea's supersonic Hi-T-50 have been chosen. But in April 2014, Iraq decided to buy 12 second-hand L-159 for $200 million. In 2012, Iraq made the announcement of purchases worth $4.2 (£5 billion) of Russian weapons. As of October 9, 30 Mi-28N Havoc helicopters and 42 to 50 Pantsir S-1 air defense systems have been ordered. After agreeing with the deal, the Iraqi government reportedly called off the deal due to corruption concerns. The reported cancellation was soon said to be false, and the deals are going ahead. In May 2013, Iraq reopened its investigation of corruption in the deal. On 5 June 2014, following the ISIS invasion, Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki announced a purchase of more than a dozen Sukhoi Su-25s from Russia worth up to $500 million. According to a report from the International Institute of Strategic Studies, the tail numbers seen on of some of the new Sukhoi ground attack aircraft match those that had been delivered to Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force, who has agreed to aid Iraq against the terrorist ISIS invasion. See also, Iraqi Security Forces, Abed Hamd Mohash, Notes. References, Kenneth M. Polak, Arabs at War, Military Effectiveness 1948-91, University of Nebraska Press, Lincoln, London, 2002, Sada, Georges. Black, J. N. Saddam's Secrets. Integrity Media Europe. ISBN A1-59145-504-9. Further reading, Sean Boyle, Iraqi Boasts Air Defense Network, Jane's Intelligence Review, June 2002, PA 2-4, Craig Caffrey, Labor Pains, Born Again Air Forces Test Their New Wings, Jane's International Defense Review, September 2011, 68-74.